Hello and welcome. In the previous video, we finished the inventory system, and in this video, I'm gonna do some small improvements and fix some issues. Also, I'm gonna add two new types of item. So to start, if I go to the character script in the get data function, and let's take a look. Here it is. When we get the data for our item, let's make sure that weapon to equip is not null, and let's add an else. So if weapon to equip is null, then let me cut that, bring this here, and if it is not null, we need to check to see if our item that we are getting the data for it equals to weapon to equip, and if it is, then we are going to return weapon to equip instead of weapon. Now let's find the function to add item to inventory locally, and at the end of the function, let's move this two lines inside the else condition right here. So that is another issue that we needed to fix. And inside the canvas manager, in the close inventory function, here it is, close inventory, we need to add an extra line at the end of the function, character loot target equals to null. Now in the session manager, I want to add the option to merge the items when we trade items between characters. Right now, if you pick up an ammo, for example, it's not gonna be merged with the current ammo that you have. So to fix that issue, I am going to first create a struct, name it trade item data. So inside server RPC for trading the items, we have 4 dictionaries here, and I am going to replace them with dictionaries of type trade item data and item.data. So I'm going to comment those. Now we can go and take a look at the errors down there. So our split items now gets item.data. So in order to fix the issue, we simply say split item dot get data instead of that. So to the next error, first I am going to get a merge by defining an item and looping through the character 2 inventory to see if our character 2 has already an item with this ID. So we could just merge this item inside that item. So if there is one, I am going to pass it to the add item to inventory. So I'm going to add it as the second parameter. And here, after that, instead of adding the item like this, I'm going to remove this and I'm going to add the item right here. First, I am going to create a new data, and then I'm going to get the data for the item, set the value for it. Also, if the merge is null, then boolean is going to be false. Otherwise, boolean is going to be true, and we're going to get the network ID. And finally, we're going to add it to the list. So let's do the same thing for items 2 to 1 for the split. I just say split item dot get data. Now here, let's remove that. We need to get the merge from the character 1 inventory and pass the merge to add item to inventory, and here we are going to get the data and add it to the items 2 to 1. So that's it for the server RPC. Let's go and take a look at the client RPC as well. So now these strings that we are passing are no longer int string dictionaries, so we need to replace them with these dictionaries. So instead of string int and string int, I'm going to say trade item data and item data. To merge the items now, we can go to the for each loop, and here before we add the item to the inventory locally, we can define a variable and name it merge. And if our item merge boolean is true and the merge ID exists within the inventory, we're going to assign the merge item, and then we can pass the merge to the add item to inventory. Also, let's take care of these values here. So instead of this one, we are going to say item.item.network ID, and for the other ones, we are going to say item.item value. The same thing here, item value. Now let's go for the next for loop. So this is going to be item.id this is going to be item network ID. Also, this is going to be value. And for this one, we are just going to use split item. Now the same thing here. This is going to be item.network ID and value, the same thing here, dot value. So here, before add item to inventory, let's define the merge, and using the item merge boolean and item network ID string, try to find the merge and then add it to the add to inventory function. Finally, at the split items 2, let's pass the ID for this one, network ID for this, split item for that, and value for this one. Now let's go to the item script, and here I am going to create a vector 3 and name it last position. Let's also go and create the update function. I'm going to create it using public virtual void update. So if our weapon can be picked up and if we are in the server, we are going to check the last position and compare it with current position. And if it is not a match, then we're going to do something, and after that we are going to assign the last position to transform that position. Also here in the set ground status, we are going to set the last position to position. Now back to the start function. Here I'm going to check to see if we are in the server, and if this item is a weapon, we're going to do something, otherwise we do something else. So before we write the values for this, I am going to create 2 more item types. The first one I am going to name consumable, and the second one I am going to name miscellaneous. So basically any item that is not a weapon, ammo, or consumable, I'm gonna put inside this category. So let's open this, and I am going to do something like the ammo. So inside the ammo we have this variable called amount, so I'm going to do it for this one as well, and I am going to inherit from item. So let's do the same thing for the consumable. So here it is, that is our amount variable, and we are going to inherit from item. Also for the consumable, I am going to create a public enum called action, and for now just create a heal action. For example, if you have a health potion. And up here I am going to create 2 more variables. The first one is the action of this consumable, and the second one is action value. For example, if it's a health potion, how much health point is going to restore if you consume it. And let's also create a function for consuming this. It is going to get a character, and if the amount is greater than 0 and the character is not null, then we consume it. That's a function we're going to do later. Now back to the item. Here I am going to create 2 functions. The first one is called getAmount, and the other one is setAmount. We could also create another function, name it addAmount, which is going to set the amount by getting the amount and adding the value. So back to the start function, let's finish our condition here. If it is the server and if it is weapon, I'm gonna set the amount to the weapon clip size. Otherwise, I'm gonna set the amount to 1. So here in the update function, we need to update the item position. So we are going to use the session manager to do that. I am going to create a function, name it update item position, and another one called update item position client RPC. So in the item, we could simply call the session manager singleton update item position and pass this. By the way, this is happening on the server, so we don't need the server RPC. We're just going to broadcast it to the clients. So first we're going to check the item, make sure it's not null. Then we get the data for that item, convert it to JSON, and send it to the update item position client RPC. And inside this, we are going to convert it back to item data. Then we're going to get all items in the scene. We're going to loop through them to find this specific item. And when we found it, we're going to set the position and Euler angle for that item. Now inside ammo, we are referencing the amount from a lot of places. So we need to go to each one of those places. And instead of referencing the amount, we can just simply reference the function we created here in the item, getAmount, and it is going to give us the amount based on the item type. So if I rename this amount to something else like amount to 2, doesn't matter. Now we should get a bunch of errors on different scripts. So let's go ahead and try fix some of those scripts. Let's take a look at the Canvas Manager for a start. Here we have an error on item to pick updated. For example, instead of doing all of that, let me cut that and bring it here. Instead of checking to see if it is ammo or not, then assign that text, we can simply just remove that and say item to pick dot get amount to a string. Let's also take a look at the character. Well, that's a lot of errors. So from the top here in the get data, so instead of doing all of this, I could just simply say item I dot get amount, and we can get rid of that. So to the next error, here in the initialize items on ground, yes, we have this error right here, which we can simply say items on ground I dot set amount, and we can pass the value to the function. So I'm going to remove that. Let's take a look at the other errors. The same thing here. We can set the item dot amount using that function, so we don't need to specify the type of the item every time. We don't need to check it constantly. So let's take a look at the other error. I think it should be inside the initialize. Yep, here it is. So instead of setting the amount like this and this, we could just cut that and bring it here. Also, let's remove that one. So we can simply just say item dot set amount, and we pass that value. So to the next one, this one we don't actually need to change because it's specific for the ammo. So we're not gonna touch those values, because the second we change back the name to amount, those errors are gonna be gone. So let's see if we have any other errors we could fix. Here in the add item to inventory locally, and for some reason I keep writing item instead of item, so let's rename that first. So here we can say merge dot add amount, and we say item dot get amount. So we can simply do that and remove this one. In the next error, let's take a look at the drop items client RPC. Here we also could set the amount of items I. So set amount to item dot value and get rid of that. And here for the split item, we could also set the amount to item value item 2 and remove that one. So let's also take a look at the session manager. Here we have a few small errors as well. So let's look at the trade items between characters server RPC. So first let's actually set the value of the split item here to the remained. Now to set the value of the remained, let's go up here. Instead of doing all of that, let me check to see if it is a weapon or not first. So, and add an else. Also, let's define an integer, call it C. So here, if it is a weapon, count equals to that. But if it is not, C equals to get amount. And then we can bring these conditions here and paste it here. And let's just remove that area. Instead of these ammo dot amount, we could use C. So that's it for the amount here. Let's also take a copy of this and we can use it here as well. So I'm gonna give some space, and here instead of character 1, I'm gonna use character 2, and that should do it. We could also get rid of that. Here we go. And not to forget to set the amount for that item here to C. Let's also do it for the other one up there. Here it is. For character 1, also going to be C. Now further down we have a bunch of other errors. So split item dot set amount to remained, and let's get rid of that. And also further down, instead of using that, we could use set amount and pass the value and remove all of that. The same thing for the other error here. Split item set amount and remove that. So let's see here as well. Set the amount to that value right over there and remove that. So there is one last error here in the session manager, and we are going to take care of it like this and get rid of that part. Now let's go back to the character, and here in the drop item server RPC, I think we need to do something similar. First, let's take care of the split item, set amount to the remained, and let's clear that. Now here we also need to define an integer called C, and let's bring this condition that checks for the type of the item. If it is weapon, we're gonna do that. Otherwise, C equals to item I get amount, and then we can bring all these conditions here and remove that part. So this is going to be C. That's also the same here as well, and this is our variable, the same thing here. And here at the end we are going to set the amount to C. Now let's go and check out our inventory item. We have an error as well, which I can say count equals to item.getAmount, and here I can just say, instead of all of that, it is going to be count.toString. So I'm going to go back to the ammo and change the name back to amount. So if I save this, all errors should be gone. So this video was about taking care of the issues and fixing some bugs. Now the project is working a lot better. So to test it, let's create a cylinder. And if I reset the position for this one and scale it down a little bit to something like that, now we can bring it here. And I am also going to add a rigid body, and let's add a consumable script, name it something like health potion. Also I'm gonna name the game object health potion. Go to the prefabs and create a folder, name it consumables, and make a prefab out of this. Inside the prefab manager we add our potion to the items. So now we can create as many items as we want and make them either consumable or other type of items that are not consumable, and all of them are going to inherit from item class. Well, let's actually get the data value here in the get data using the get amount function, and we could just remove that. So that's it for the get data. Now here in the start we have a small issue as well. So let's create a public function, call it server initialize, and let's go ahead and create a boolean up there and name it server initialized. And now back to our function here, we say if server initialized, then we're gonna return, otherwise we are going to set that to true. Also let's make sure it is the server that is running this function. So if it is not the server, we're gonna return. And now let's cut that value and bring it here, and instead of that we call server initialize. Now inside the session manager, when we start the server, let's actually get a list of all the items in the scene, similar to what we're doing in the item positions when we're updating them. So in the start server, I am going to create a new array of items, find all the items in the scene, and for every single one of them I am going to call server initialize. Now let's go and test our project to see if it is still working. I am going to get a build for it. So I'm going to start this one and also start the editor. And let's use this one as a server for a change and use the editor as a client. So we have a health potion here. We also have a weapon. So we can pick up any item that we want. And let's actually start another client right here. So here we go. Now if I take care of this, and if we go and take a look at this character, you see that it has the health potion, some ammo, and a weapon. Now inside our inventory we have 1,000 ammo, and the player has 1,000 ammo as well. So if we pick that up, and if I save this by closing the inventory, now if I open the inventory, we have one item with 2,000. We don't have two separate items, each one 1,000, and that's what we did right now inside our session manager. So I am going to finish the video right here. And by the way, the download link to the scripts are in the description of the video. And I hope you enjoyed the videos so far. Thanks for watching.